So, this gathering is about coming into alignment with who you really are. We've been talking about alignment for many, many years in this sort of a setting or forum. First, we said to you, when you desire something and you believe otherwise, you are splitting your energy. But when your desire and your belief are in the same place, now you're in a place where it can be manifested. We talked to you about your inner being. We talked to you about this stream that flows in the direction of who you really are. And today we are talking about this vortex of creation. We know we're hard to explain to your friends who aren't here. What went on in that meeting, well, it's hard to explain. Well, try. Well, there's this man who calls his wife Abraham. And she must be some sort of a multiple personality because she refers to herself as they and we. And recently she's taken to drawing a big circle on the floor and insisting that it's a vortex and telling us all we should go there. We are endlessly looking for ways to help you focus on a vibration that you cannot translate through your physical senses. Your physical reality is so intoxicating to you because you see it with your eyes and hear it with your ears and smell it with your nose and taste it with your tongue and feel it. It's this tactile reality. You say it's real because I'm translating it as so are others. And we want you to know that there is a vibrational reality that is more real than the reality that you're translating. It's just that you can't translate it with your eyes and ears. It's a vibration that is translated through your emotional sensors. It's a vibration that lets you know. In other words, how do you describe the sensation? In other words, there's smelling and there's seeing. Yes. There's tasting and there's touching. But what about knowing? Can we call knowing a sense? What about believing? Is believing a sense? Is hoping a sense? In other words, these are emotions, but don't you just love the taste of ice cream? And don't you just love the taste or the knowing of your own worthiness? Don't you just love the alignment of source? Don't you just love being tuned in, tapped in, turned on, a vibrational extension of all that you are here focused in this body? Yes, seeing and hearing and smelling and tasting and touching and knowing and loving and fully functioning as source energy in a physical body. That's what you came for. Not one of you said, I'll go forth and I'll pinch myself off from knowing and loving. I'll pinch myself off. I'll sacrifice who I am. I'll struggle and I'll make it happen. And we say, you're getting carried away with that. You're carried away with that. In other words, it's so interesting to watch so many of you making your decisions and making your action from outside the vortex when it's really, 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 really hard. You are translating vibration, and that's why you see. And you are translating vibration, and that's why you hear. And that's why you smell and taste and touch. You are translating vibration. But you have another sensor that translates vibration more precisely than all of your other sensors put together. And you might say, how could anything be more precise than my vision? We say your emotional guidance system is you can feel vibrational alignment or not. Alignment or not. You can feel when you are approaching your vortex. You can feel when you are inside it. You can feel when you are maintaining the vibration of it. Not just because manifestation begins to come to give you evidence of your alignment, but because your emotions give you evidence of alignment and not. The better you feel, the more in vibrational sync you are. The animals know it. They move away from any experience that causes them to focus in a way that they are out of alignment. You call them instinctual, and that's a fine word, but they are vibrational interpreters of this emotional sense. And it might be fair to say that part of the reason that they are better at interpreting emotional vibration than humans is because they're not talking all the time. They're not using their words to cover stuff up. They are not communicating and trying to socialize in the way that humans do. That's an advantage they have. But they are also not the magnificent creator that human is. In other words, we have to really help you give yourself the benefit of the doubt when we say you are dissecting extraordinary contrast for the purpose of expanding desire. So because your desires are expanding more rapidly than any species ever, as your desires are expanding more rapidly, you need a keener sensor or awareness of your sensor in order to recognize where you are incrementally. A man said to us last week, I have diabetes. I've had it for a long time, he explained. And every day I prick my finger for the purpose of reading the meter to see where my blood sugars are. And later in our conversation, we pointed out that the reason that he does it every day is because he doesn't want it to get too far out of whack before he figures out it's out of whack. And so we propose a happiness pricker. In other words, wouldn't it be nice if you caught your misalignment in the early subtle stages before you go into a coma? Wouldn't it be nice if you had that much attention? In other words, he's wise enough to know he wants to stay in balance. By the time this workshop comes to a close, we think it would be really nice if you had decided that you're going to pay attention to where you are emotionally and that you're going to make that your number one priority. And rather than just accepting what is as a condition that you have no other option other than to observe, that you care so much about your happiness indicator that you choose the thoughts based upon alignment. In other words, this man does not choose the food because of the way it tastes. He chooses the food that he eats because of the indicator that he's checking. And we think it would be a really good idea if you would choose the thoughts you think because of the indicator it will give back to you, not just because it's something that's there. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, and it also gets your attention, and it also takes you out of the vortex over and over and over and over again. And your excuse is, but Abraham, it's true. And we say, so what? There are a lot of things that are true that you don't want to include in your vibration and create in your experience. So that's really not a good indicator, just because something's true, that you would give your attention to it. The indicator is, how does it feel when I think about it? And is there a way that I can think about it that feels better to me? And if there isn't a way that I can think about that feels better to me, then I'll think about something else that does feel better to me. And you go along with that so far. You say, well, I like that. I can guide my thoughts to a certain extent, but there are these hot buttons in my life. There are those issues, these people that push my buttons. And we say, really, nobody has access to your buttons but you. Really, nobody does. Jerry and Esther were laughing because they were just here just a few months ago. And when they left here, their monster bus broke down on Highway 80. Just stopped. Wasn't easy to get off the road either. It's big. No power steering, no brakes, no engine. It just stopped. And Jerry and Esther looked at each other. No cell phone service either. And Esther said, I think I would like to live here for the rest of my life. How do you feel about this beautiful place? Jerry said, how much water do we have on board? And then they began to laugh because before they were here, they were in San Antonio. And when they were in San Antonio for 9 days, Esther had a long list of things to do, and she was going to make it happen or die trying. And Jerry was in the vortex. And Esther attributed him being in the vortex to the fact that she had the list. When you're not in the vortex, you can justify anything. So Jerry is bounding around the property. He's entertaining everyone. He's working with the building crew. He's making plans. He was just flowing with the stream. He was tuned in, tapped in, turned on. And Esther was smiling and polite and working very hard to get everything done. And Jerry said, I think I'm going to take the bus over to Detroit Diesel. We haven't had it serviced for a while. And Esther said, well, we're on our way to Marathon. Can't we do it there? And Jerry said, I don't know. I just feel like I'd like to take it over. And Esther said, it's 50 miles over there. And if they need to keep it, everything I need is in it. And we have such a short period of time as she began defending her out of the vortex position. And now as they're sitting on the side of the road, have you ever seen a 45-foot tour bus towed? It was very interesting. And it had a big hole in the big intake air. And so that's why they hadn't had much power in the mountains, and it's why they were off on the side of the road. And then Esther said to Jerry, I'm having an epiphany. From now on, in our family, let's make a deal. The one who's in the vortex gets to call the shots from now on. And then Esther thought of how many times and how many mothers, usually mothers, isn't mother usually calling the shots? And isn't she usually the last one to be in the vortex? Her feeling of responsibility is so great. Her feeling of sacrifice often is amplified. In other words, you get what we're talking about, don't you? In other words, it's so easy to focus upon the details of life and get bogged down to the point that you're not even a distant memory of the true being that you really are. And then the harder it goes, the harder you dig in, and the harder you dig in, the more you justify, and the more you justify, the harder it goes, and the harder it goes, the more you dig in, until you have a breakdown on the side of the road. And so we want to talk about getting in the vortex. We want to talk about making it your highest priority. We want to talk about getting in the vortex because that's where you rendezvous with all of your clarity and all of your power, all of your wisdom, all of your knowing, all of your balance, all of your stamina, all of your well-being. That's where you rendezvous with everything you want. That's where you meet up with everything that you've put there, you see. And to spend any time doing anything else. Now we know, Jerry and Esther have laughed about it even since then, because they are always focusing and always wanting to be in the vortex. But sometimes things just happen, and when you focus, you're not. And sometimes Esther will find herself saying, Jerry too, but not so much. He's usually standing off laughing at Esther. Jerry will say, want to take 15 minutes to meditate? And Esther will say, I don't really have time for that. And we're in the vortex saying to her, although she can't hear it, you don't have time not to get in the vortex. In other words, if you'll take the time to tune to the frequency of who you are, you're not just tuning to the frequency of who you are. You're not just tuning to your well-being. You're tuning in a way that allows your cells complete communication with one another and with Source. You're tuning in a way that allows you to be a cooperative component to everything that the law of attraction has already gathered and put into your vortex. And do you know the silly thing that's tripping you up? The only silly, really ridiculously silly thing that's keeping you from understanding this vortex and from being willing to acknowledge it and go right into it is that you are accustomed to translating reality through your eyes and your ears and your nose. You want to begin translating your reality through your love, through your joy, through your knowing, through the way you feel. We want you to say things such as, I can feel that, or I'm on my way to that. I can feel that. I'm reaching for the feeling of that. So, we have enjoyed this interaction immensely. It is delicious to come together with those like you, who are understanding a little more every day who you are and why you are here. The appreciation that we feel for your willingness to mix it up out there in the confusing world, while without knowing it, you are contributing to this magnificent vortex of expansion.